Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to round number 15 of the Afterburn IndyCar series here from Twin Ring Motegi. Last week the drivers raced on the oval. This week they're racing on the road course. Track holding its first race in 1998, being a permanent fixture in American Open Wheel Series from then until last year, when they held the final race. In fact, on this road course, seeing as the oval was affected by the Japanese tsunami. 12 drivers set in the field today. Nico Brandt will line up in the first position with a qualifying time of a 1 minute 35.621. Lining up alongside him, only 2 tenths behind, Hisman Balal in the number 22 machine, with GC Niminen lining up on the inside of row number 3. Mauricio Melez in the 4th position, with Joe Branch and Steve Clays in row number 3. Dave Jinks and Julian Pham will line up 7th and 8th in row number 4, with Danley Ent and Brad Sanford in row number 5. And then Daniel Lee and John Ailes will start from row number 6 from the rear of this field. We're going racing for 62 laps here today at Twin Ring Motegi. You'll notice the drivers are starting currently on the back straightaway. We're going to have ourselves a very short and quick pace lap here to get this race underway. Drivers will be aiming to make anywhere between probably making 1 stop. However, a 2-stop strategy can work if you can manage to push that car to the extreme. So most drivers will be, however, running that 1-stop strategy. It'll be interesting to see how drivers like Nico Brandt and Hisman Balal will do from the front of the field. Keep an eye also on Daniel Lee starting from the 11th position. He's got his makeaway through the track as well, on which it is possible to overtake, but you have to get that overtaking maneuver done quickly if you're going to have any chance of getting that pass complete, because the track often doubles back on itself, which means that the drivers will move from being on the opportune side of the racetrack to the unopportune side. So you see there the field currently sat on the back straightaway. The pace car is going to start illuminating its light any moment now, and you see that it's pulling off now down the back straightaway. Very, very short pace lap here. It will make that right-hand turn through turn number 11, pull off after turn 12, and then the field becoming single file through turn 13 and 14 for this start. And let's not forget as well, this is the second race in the Motegi Challenge. Currently the driver in the hot seat is Brad Sanford, but he's starting this race in the 10th position. Be interesting to see what happens to him in this race. You see there the pace car coming through turn number 12, accelerating up. The field will now be put in the command of Nico Brandt, coming through the final corner, and as he does so, you see Hisman Balal on the outside there, and round 15 of the Afterburn IndyCar series here on Glacier TV. It's green! And I tell you what, a great start there from GC Niminen, as Hisman Balal got held up a little bit at the start, immediately trying to dive down the inside there into turn number 1, but he's lost himself a position here at the race start, as everyone has managed to get through turns number 1 and 2 okay. Daniel Lee there is able to get himself around Brad Sanford on this start. He's now trying to make it, he's got a car, sorry. And that is Mauricio Melez there, who is in at the gravel in turn number 3. He drops to the rear of the field, and that is our first incident of the day here at Motegi. And very early on, it looks as though he hasn't got any damage to his car, but it looks as though he was involved in an incident in turn 3. And just having a look to see whether he got punted or whether, it looks as though, I'm having a second look back, it looks as though he just spun out on entry, coming into turn number 3. So he's our first casualty of the day, but immediately he's caught up to the rear of Brad Sanford. He was struggling here at Motegi there. He's just running over to the left-hand side. Sanford in that 09 machine. He's got John Ailes behind him, but a little bit further ahead of the field, Daniel Lee's been able to get himself around down the end. Now trying to work on the inside of, on the outside even, of Julian Pham there, coming down to put 1 lap in the books. In fact, to take that back, he's currently working towards the end of that lap down the back straightaway, which they use for a lot of Formula A racing here in Japan. He's got himself around Pham, now trying to get himself around Dave Jinks. Daniel Lee's having a great start here, moving himself up from what he started in the 11th position. As he comes down past the start-finish line, he will get Dave Jinks here early, and that moves him up in the space of one lap into the 6th position. So he's your hardest charger. Out front, however, you have Nico Brand and Esteban Barro looking down to the inside of UC Nillingham and managing to get that pass done there into turn number 2 and 3. And then Nillingham was able to take that second position back. Sorry, Nillingham lost that second position after Ballout was able to get it, and Ballout is there, so I forget, he got held up a little bit at that start. A bit slow getting away from the line, and he lost that second position to Nillingham coming down into turn number 1. So meanwhile, Nico Brand is out front. The gap between himself and Nillingham is already Ballout now is 2.8 seconds. And GC Nillingham is sat in the 3rd position. Joe Branch, he's holding on, sat in 4th. Steve Plays is currently sat in the 5th position. And then watch out for Daniel Lee, gaining 5 positions here on that first lap. Now he's pulled himself already 2.5 seconds clear of Dave Jinks, who sat in the 7th position. Junior Pham is sat in 8th, Danny Ench in 9th, and Marito Melez has managed to get himself around Brad Sumter, moving him up into the top 10 as Melez diving down the inside and touching there with... Oh, no, that is not good. That's not good. Danny Ench was involved in that as well, and that was a clumsy manoeuvre for Moreto, as Danny Ench coming down into the corner, left the line open, and it just looked as though Melez just turned into him, and that is disappointing there for Danny Ench, as he was having himself a clean race, as he always does in the series, gave him the room, and just ended up getting T-boned. You just see a replay of that now. Danny Ench is struggling here. I believe he's trying to get that car back down to pit lane, which he's doing so now. He's got himself a little bit of side pod damage to that race car, and that is going to be disappointing early on in this race, as there's nothing that he could have done without literally just driving off the racetrack. Meanwhile, Melez carries on. He's currently sat in the 9th position, but ahead of that, the interesting battle on the racetrack is that between GC Nillingham, Joe Branch, Steve Clays, and Daniel Lee. These 4 drivers currently separated by less than 5 seconds on the racetrack. In fact, Daniel Lee's really putting that pressure on Steve Clays. He gets himself very squarely there into the S's, and to get right out the throttle, unless he's going to allow Daniel Lee to catch right back up with him. As we're currently having a look on board that 64 machine of Daniel Lee. Trying to get himself out to the right hand side. He's going to try and make a big move coming down into the hairpin, not quite close enough. Just trying to upset Clays for the moment, trying to break his momentum. But as they come down that back straightaway, again he's pulling out of the draft, and you would suspect that he would want to try and keep that draft down the straightaways as much as possible, to try and, if you look at how close he was coming into the corner, surely he would have been able to pull to the right had he stayed in that slipstream for the first half of straightaway. But Daniel Lee there, but I don't know if he's trying to play a different strategy, keep his tyres cool, but you see there he's got a lot closer down the front straightaway. Now he can try and pull out to that right hand side coming down into turn number 1. Again though, not quite close enough, as he's now looking to the high side coming off of that corner. But he's got a good run this time, and he almost rear ends there. In fact, it might have been a tiny bit of contact between himself and Steve Plays. Coming down now into turn number 2, and Daniel Lee just gives the position away there. Not going to commit to the move, as it was very close between himself and Steve Plays coming down on the exit of turn number 1. And Clays goes off, he's into the gravel, so that means that Daniel Lee will be able to get that position away. Clays cracking a little bit under the pressure there in that number 13 machine. That allows Daniel Lee to go past, and his next victim is going to be Joe Branch in the number 27 Afterburn machine. And Joe Branch's last lap was a 1 minute 40.525. Compare that to Daniel Lee, a 1 minute 38.743. So Lee is going to be right up the rear of Joe Branch imminently. Meanwhile, your race leader, we haven't talked about him much, Nico Brand in the number 24 machine. He is setting the pace at the moment. In fact, his fastest lap is miles and far away from everyone. He's at a 1 minute 35.621 was the time that he set in qualifying. In the race, a 1 minute 37.119. In fact, with the exception of his first lap, his second, third and fourth lap have all been within 0.2 of a second. So great driving by Nico Brandt out from a position that he was used to being in last season. However, this season he has not been having the same string of good luck he had last year, and he has had some terrible finishes, being taken out by lap traffic in mid-Ohio. He's had incidents on the oval side, got himself into the wall at Watkins Glen. You see there, Daniel Lee getting himself around Joe Branch early on. Joe Branch getting very sideways, coming off of turn number 3 there. So, move Daniel Lee up already into the 4th position, move Joe Branch down into 5th. So, Daniel Lee is on the charge. However, he is 15 seconds behind the race leader. His last lap was a 1 minute 39.975. That's 2 seconds slower than the time of Nico Brandt, who is cruising at the moment out front. He has got himself a 5.5 second lead over Esteban Balao in the number 22 machine, who in turn has the same gap over UC Nimmerman in the 82 car. So your top 5, Nico Brandt, Esteban Balao, UC Nimmerman, Joe Branch, Daniel Lee now, and then Joe Branch rounding out your top 5. They're heading down the back straightaway once again, and Daniel Lee is doing a great job currently sat in that 4th position. However, Esteban Balao, he is trying to hang on as close as possible to the rear of Nico Brandt. His last lap was 1 minute 38.201. As he comes across the line again, this time by a 1 minute 37.317, his fastest lap by about a couple of attempts, trying to close that gap to the rear of Nico Brandt. In fact, he's the only driver in the same time zone as him at the moment. However, Nico Brandt just set his fast lap of the race, 1 minute 36.675. So, a little bit back further through the field, and it looks a little bit further strung out now. Joe Branch and Steve Clays, they've been very close on the racetrack all race long. In fact, Joe Branch goes wide there. That allows Steve Clays to get that 5th position, so Joe Branch has to move back now down into the 6th position. So, Joe Branch having a difficult day in that number 27 machine, but those two drivers have been very close to the racetrack, and Joe Branch has only dropped back about 4 car lengths behind, so those two drivers should, as I say, Joe Branch has got off again. That's twice in the space of a couple of corners, and at the same time, Daniel Lee is really close now behind UC Nimmerman. This is the battle for the 3rd position. We've seen how good Daniel Lee is into the burst sector of this racetrack. A little bit weaker down into this final sector, but see there, Daniel Lee was very close there, coming down into the final corner. And as they come down the front straight away now, too wide, is it going to happen down? Very close to being too wide, but Daniel Lee just backing out the throttle once again. He's got good power off of this corner, however. We've seen that for the majority of this race, and he looks like he's got good drive once again. Can he try and make a dart down to the inside into turn number 2? He's looking, but not quite close enough. Nimmerman putting on a great show. Currently sat in that 3rd position in the 82 machine, holding on for the moment, but let's not forget, they've now got to get himself again up a slightly long straightaway. Now he's too wide coming down into turn number 4. Tightest of all of these corners, and Daniel Lee, so he is going to get the job done as they come underneath the bridge into turn 5. So while all that was happening, Joe Branch has now dropped back dramatically from the rear of Steve Clays. The gap between those two drivers is now 3 seconds on the racetrack, as Joe Branch, who believe he just got himself his tyres heated up a little bit too much, lost the grip on them, and he's going to have to cool those tyres down over the next couple of laps to try and regain some form of a rhythm as he goes a little bit wide once again. And meanwhile, you've got yourself running out your top 10. You've got yourself Dave Jinks in 7th, Julian Pham in 8th, John Ailes in 9th, and Brad Sumford running out your top 10 with Danley Ent in 11th. And Rito Malini is your first retirement of the day. So having a look back at Nico Brandt, your race leader, he's managed to pull the gap up now to 7.7 seconds over Istvan Balau. Nico Brandt's last lap was a 1 minute 36.892. Istvan Balau a 1 minute 37.745. So at the moment, Nico Brandt is pulling out times about half a second to a second a lap, which is what we'd expect early on from Nico Brandt, who's having a great drive at the moment. However, you need to keep an eye on Daniel Lee. When he's not been in traffic, he's been able to do times in the low minute 1 minute 38. It'll be interesting to see how he reacts over the next couple of laps. Now he has himself a good bit of clean air, as the gap between himself and Istvan Balau is 13 seconds on the racetrack. So things are settling down a little bit now on this field. We're currently working lap number 8 of 62 here at the Indy Grand Prix of Motegi. As I said, this track was formed in 1997 by the Honda Corporation, has played host to karts and the Indy Racing League and then the Indycar series over the previous years. However, only one of these races was held on the road course, and that was a race last year, which was originally proposed to be the final Indy Japan 300, ended up being the first race on the road course due to the effect the Japanese tsunami had on the oval itself. And when you consider how difficult it is to bank these ovals, they decided to move the track to the road course in a race which Target Chip Ganassi and Scott Dixon dominated. In this race, however, Nico Brandt, as you see that, a car, that I believe is Brad Sanford, who just got himself a little bit tight coming off of turn number 3 into the gravel. Nico Brandt goes past him to put him 1 lap down, as is Stanley Inch now. So Nico Brandt still flying his last lap of 1 minute 37.006. But this track is very notorious for big braking zones and having to keep your tyres working over the course of a long run. Now, these big braking zones means that you have to be hard on the brakes. You lock a brake up, you will spike those tyre temperatures up, and also you've got some very fast flowing sections of the racetrack with turns 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way down into turn number 9, and then you have pretty much the same thing again with that fast 12, 13, 14 complex. And to give you an update, once again in the battle for the second position, Daniel Lee's last lap was a 1 minute 38.019. Compare that to Istvan Balau, whose times have dropped off to a 1 minute 39.696. So Daniel Lee closed half a tenth of a second that last time by. Meanwhile, out front, Nico Brandt comes past the start-finish line, and as he comes down into turn number 1, he has got himself clear track ahead of him, a clear track behind him. The gap out front is now up to 10 seconds. We're just having a look in car with Nico Brandt. We'll stay there for just a couple of moments as he comes down into turn number 4. Just look at the acceleration and the precision as he goes through the second sector of the racetrack. Now coming as he just come out of turn number 9. You saw them having to get himself around the lap traffic of John Ailes. That puts him 1 lap down. Turn 10, pretty much 180-degree corner. I'm sure if it was in America it would be called the keyhole. Now the longest straightaway on the racetrack, the back straightaway, which as I've said before, they use the lower fulminate. The track dips downhill as you come down to the braking zone, means that you have to be very careful on the brakes. You don't slide off the racetrack. Then these final couple of corners, hold your breath to go underneath the bridge, flick it left a second time, and then as you come out the final corner, you're on the front straightaway. And to the left of what you see, that is the grandstand for the oval as well as the road course. You can see the oval pit lane, and then the racetrack is to the left-hand side. And one of the issues with Motegi is people have talked about on the road course is how far away the grandstands are from the actual track itself. which is one of the difficulties of having to build an oval and a road course together. In fact, Motegi is pretty much unique in its place in the world, where the oval and the road tracks are completely independent with their own set of pit buildings, layouts, and at no point do the tracks actually use the same bit of the racetrack. In fact, you see Nico right now coming underneath that bridge. That is the super speedway that he's just going underneath as he comes back down into turn number 7 and 8 once again. And that gap now between himself and Esteban Balo is up to 12.7 seconds. Meanwhile, the gap between Balo and Lee, that is now down to 10 seconds, as once again Daniel Lee was faster on that last lap, as Nico Bryan getting very squirrely there. Just cut away from here to have a look at Daniel Lee. Daniel Lee's last lap, and now finally a 1 minute 37 for him. Esteban Balo at 1 minute 37. In fact, those two times are only about a tenth of a second between them. So Daniel Lee, who was great when he joined the series at Brands Hatch, having to be a little bit more cautious here. And let's not forget, he was running well at Alton Park as well. This time he's got himself a good challenge for Esteban Balo and Nico Brandt. The battle for the 5th position, Steve Clays and Joe Bryant, that has dropped off completely for the time being. Joe Bryant is now fallen off to 15 seconds behind the racetrack, as we have our second retiree of the day. That is Brad Sanford in the 09 machine. Came out of pit lane, and it looks as though he just got himself... I don't know what happened to Sanford, actually. It looks as though he just came down pit lane and parked his car. He is going to be classified as out of the race. And in fact, we will try and find out what happened to Brad Sanford in just a couple of moments' time. Meanwhile, down the end, he is currently had a lap put on him by Steve Clays in the number 13 machine. So your top 5, Nico Brandt, Esteban Balo, Daniel Lee, G.C. Ninneman and Steve Clays, with Joe Branch said he's fallen back now to about 15 seconds behind Steve Clays in that 6th position. Dave Jinks in 7th, Julian Pham in 8th, John Hales in 9th, and Daniel Lee Ench is in 10th. And just for a moment, we will take the time to try and say hello to Brad Sanford. Brad, did you have any issues on your car, or did you just decide to put it down into pit lane?
I had issues with my internet.
That's not the first time that has happened to you today. Until that point, I mean, you are more an oval specialist. How difficult has it been to run on this road course here today?
It's been pretty difficult for me. However, I was trying to make changes with my setup, and none of it worked.
And I know you're one of the drivers in the hunt for that $10 Motegi challenge. Do you think if you get yourself back onto the racetrack, you've got any chance on that?
I think there's a good chance. There should be.
Well, get yourself back into your car, and we will hopefully talk to you later on.
Yes, sir.
And have a good race. Meanwhile, I see Brad Sanford said connection for him now was internet issues, which is something that's plagued me myself actually quite recently. He is going to try and get himself back onto the racetrack. We have 8 drivers on the lead lap. Julian Pham is the last of those drivers on the lead lap. It's a good drive today by Julian Pham. He is doing a solid job here on the road course. In fact, his time is comparable to the leaders, much closer than we've seen him at other road courses as well. Pham, in fact, has been a driver who has learnt the road courses before the ovals, as he's trying to become one of those drivers that are a master in both. So at number 78, Nuclear Energy Machine, and homage to Simona Di Silvestro. Unfortunately, yesterday had her race ended in the Milwaukee Indy Fest, paying homage to her with that livery. A little bit further ahead of him is, in fact, Dave Jinks. And the gap between those two drivers, about 6 seconds on the racetrack. Dave Jinks currently riding in the 7th position in that number 76 West USA machine. Like Pham, Dave Jinks is one of those drivers who can adapt well to both the road and the ovals. We've seen him do very well in the ovals this season. Today he's struggling a little bit. He's about a minute off the pace from Nico Brandt, however, circulating well, and he's currently in that no man's land zone. Currently sat about 6 seconds ahead of Julian Pham, but with about a 15-second gap back ahead of him will be Joe Branch in the number 27 machine. That's having a look at Joe Branch now, and Joe Branch, his times have been rather erratic the last couple of laps, as I think he's not been able to fully recover from those tyre issues. His fastest lap was a 1 minute 40.525 earlier on, but since then his times have dropped off by at least a second, and he's had a couple of difficult laps. In fact, he had a 1 minute 44 almost on lap number 10, but he's trying hard as he comes down into the final couple of corners now onto the front straightaway. Joe Branch is a driver who not only races road and oval, but races predominantly in both Formula A. In fact, he's one of those drivers who wishes that it was an official combined series more often. A number of people thought that to happen over the last couple of weeks. Joe Branch currently sat in the 6th position, and last time by he did a 1 minute 41.266. In fact, just going off track there a little bit in turn number 2, keeping it almost spinning it around, but he'll manage to save that and get back on as he comes out of turn number 3. Your race leader then is still Nico Brandt. The gap between himself and Esteban Balao now up to 14.1 seconds on the racetrack. Last time by, Nico Brandt did a 1 minute 36.896. In comparison, Esteban Balao in second did a 1 minute 37.196. Daniel Lee, who had been closing over those previous couple of laps, as he comes across the line now, he did himself a 1 minute 37.496. So Daniel Lee lost himself about 4 tenths of a second that last lap there. And in fact, Joe Brandt looks as though he has had more issues to his day, as he gets it always a sideways, coming through the S's, hitting the wall hard there. And once you get that car offline through the S's, through that difficult section of the racetrack, through turns number 7 and 8, it is so difficult to correct it. And it looks as though as he came out of 8, just got that car a little bit loose, and hit in the worst possible place, just where the tyre barrier started. His car is toast, and he is going to have to get himself some repairs to his race car. He is currently sat down in pit lane, and we will try and talk to him in just a matter of moments. Meanwhile, Steve Plays is currently sat in the 5th position. He is 44 seconds behind the race leader. In fact, he's gaining a little bit over UC Ninderman, who really has been struggling those last couple of laps. Last time by, Clays did a 1 minute 38.5. In comparison, Ninderman a 1 minute 39.2. So, Steve Plays and UC Ninderman, that will be a battle to watch on the racetrack in the battle for the 4th position. And whilst we do that, Joe, you just had a big moment there. Hello, welcome to the booth. Just coming out of turn number 8.
Yeah, it was a moment. I don't know what happened.
And it did look as though you'd had a couple of issues early on in that race. Do you think that you just heated up those tyres a little bit too much and they'd given away a bit too much grip?
Yeah, and I must put the power down a little too early. Today is the first laps I ran at this track, so I was kind of happy with my pace, and just lack of experience at the track, I guess.
And are we going to see you try and get some repairs to your race car and get back out on track, or is this it for you?
Nah, I'm gonna go back out and try to gain some positions there.
Well, in fact, we see you just about to come out of pit lane, so we will talk to you later on.
10 for it.
So you see there, Joe Branch in the number 27 machine just coming back out on pit lane. He's now relegated to the 9th position, classified as 1 lap down. Currently working lap 16. In fact, we're about to conclude lap 16 of 62 here in the Indy Grand Prix of Motegi. Nico Brandt is your race leader. You can see he is catching Julian Pham there to put him 1 lap down. So we'll have ourselves 6 drivers on the lead lap in any matter of moments now. You see Pham just moving to the right hand side there. Job done for Brandt, easily down the front straight away. 16 laps in the book. Nico Brandt is your race leader. So currently that battle between UC Nimmerman and Steve Plays, that is the one that is going to be best on the racetrack. Nimmerman's last lap was a 1 minute 39.635. In fact, we're going to get some more accurate data. He's coming out of the second to last corner, now the final corner, through turn number 13 and 14, down the front straight away as he comes past the stripe. Put his 16th lap on the books. He just did himself a 1 minute 39.174. Meanwhile, Steve Clays behind him once again takes out 3/10 of a second in that battle for the 4th position. So Clays charging hard after having a difficult start to that race, trying to get himself back some positions. In fact, Clay started in the 6th position, got himself up a couple of positions early. We saw him have an off-track incident, but Niederman, after starting in the 3rd spot, getting 2nd on lap number 1, is now falling back into the clutches of Clays in that battle for the 4th position. Oh no, Clays, he hits the wall there. Oh, just coming underneath the bridge in the exit of turn number 5. Just as we ended up finishing talking about him, getting himself loose on the exit of turn number 4, sorry, I say. Getting himself into the concrete wall that supports the super speedway. Clays is having to limp it back now down to pit lane. He's probably just outside that pit window, but more importantly, he's going to lose himself a ton of time as he's coming now down into turn number 9. He's got half a lap still to go. Thankfully now he's just got himself 2 straightaways and a couple of kinks before he can get himself down to pit lane to make himself some repairs. But Clays has now got himself on the back foot after charging his way up to less than 4 seconds behind Yeezy Dillingham in the battle for the 4th position, and that is going to give a huge sigh of release to that 82 machine as we expect to see Clays come down pit road this time by. And you see that Clay slowing down for pit lane. Pit limit here is very slow to see as he still get himself around those 2 corners on the pit entry. 37 miles an hour, one of the slowest pit lanes of all of the road courses. And it takes an eternity to come down pit road here. We'll see that as Clay comes down into his pit box. He'll try and get himself some repairs to his race car. Also top up on Sunoco race gas and get himself 4 fresh tyres as well. And I'm not sure, but doing my calculations, it looks like Clays is just out of the window to be able to stop for the first time. So he's going to have to make himself another stop here in this race. Just been lapped by Nico Brandt. And he now falls all the way down, if my maths is correct, to the 6th position by the look of it. Releasing position to Dave Jinks, and he's got Julian Pham only now 4 seconds behind him. So up front, Nico Brandt, he's through your race leader in the number 24 machine. The gap between himself and Esteban Balao now up to 16.7 seconds. However, we want to keep an eye on that battle for 2nd and 3rd. Esteban Balao, who managed to get himself back up into that 2nd position, is in a last lap of 1 minute 37.6. Compare that to Daniel Lee, his last lap, a 1 minute 37.1. So Lee is back on the charge, taking half a second out of Balao that last lap. And these 2 drivers have been trading lap times between them, and it will be a case of drivers will need to do some very good pit stops here if they're going to have any chance of keeping those positions or gaining time, as Daniel Lee will be ready to pounce in the event that Balao or in fact Brandt ahead of them make a mistake. As you see there, Nico Brandt, he comes past the stripe once again to put 19 laps on the book. He's just having Joe Branch moving to the right-hand side to put himself a 2nd lap down. And as we do so, we'll go on board once again with Nico Brandt as he will take you through a lap of twin ring Motegi. as he comes across the final couple of corners. Just how much speed does Nico Bryant carry into turn number 13, coming down past the front straightaway once again. But his 20th lap in the books, approaching 1/3 distance here in the Indy Grand Prix of Motegi. It's about time to say hello to Yoni Backman, helping out for today. Yoni, it looks as though Nico Bryant, after some bad luck in this series this year, is back on form.
Yeah, I can't say nothing else than that I am very impressed with the pace he's setting. Haven't seen IndyCars around here before this one, but like lapping in his own second readings, that's pretty impressive. I mean, he's fastest lap 136.6, and he's still lapping within half a second almost every single lap.
And with Nico Bryant, you always know it is a case of consistency, and always one of the best drivers in the IndyCar roadside of things. In fact, he not only races that, but we've seen him racing on many other tracks as well. And for him, this will be good practice for a couple of weeks' time for the official series, which will be racing at Twin Motegi. So we now have ourselves a benchmark for both qualifying and race for drivers to aim for. Nico Bryant clearly is setting the pace as Daniel Lee has come in to make his first pit stop of the day in the number 64 machine, coming down pit road to get himself fresh tyres and topping up on race fuel. So he is one of the first drivers to commit himself down onto pit road, getting himself around Brad Sanford on the process of doing so. No incidents for him. That is a scheduled stop for that number 64 machine. We saw him do that earlier. And he is now back onto the racetrack, pretty much about to enter turn number 8. So having a look at Esteban Balao momentarily in the number 22 machine, he is falling back further from Nico Bryant in the number 24 car, but he's got himself now half a minute's gap between himself and UC Nimmerman. Nimmerman, I believe, has also come down, having an interesting race here today. In fact, this for Nimmerman is one of the best races we've seen him do for quite a while. He was involved in a great race at Mosport earlier on this season, so close to scoring victory there. Esteban Balao, let's not forget, he has had some good races in this series as well. We know Balao for a hard charger. He's been able to get himself from the rear of the field up towards the front. However, today it does look as though, Yoni, that he hasn't got anything for Nico Bryant ahead of him.
Yeah, it strongly looks like it, but we have to remember the Mid-Ohio race where Esteban Balao just did an insane rush through the field. And also in this series we've pretty much familiar sight to see that once somebody starts charging their way through the field, something nasty is going to happen. Almost seems to be like a constant thing in the series that if you're going to charge, get ready for some accidents. Whether it's because of them or not.
And let's not forget, Nico Bryant was on point to get himself a great result at Mid-Ohio before he had incidents with back markers spinning innocently ahead of him. Bryant had nowhere to go. But when you consider Bryant's season this year to last year, in fact, you'll see the details come up across the screen for this season now. I mean, last season, Nico Bryant was pretty much the driver to beat. I think he only failed to win 2 of the races he didn't enter. And he was dominant all season long, despite having some good competition from the likes of Marco Vitin and Andrew Missari. This season, however, when you look at, even if you take on the road siding stand of things, Nico Bryant's currently only sat in the 5th position with just a solitary pole and a solitary top 5 coming into this race. And that's not a position you hope to see him in, and he's yet to score himself a race victory here.
Indeed, it's been a rough season for a majority of the top runners that we've spoken about from previous seasons. And on the screen, by the way, if you're into IndyCars and you wish to try it off-road, go to joebranch.com and ask Joe for a special set of off-road tires, because that's been about 15th time he's been testing those off-road tires now.
For more information on this, go to joebranch.com or teamafterburn.com. I'm sure that I'm going to have to get myself a commission set up on that. But Joe really is struggling here today. I mean, he's a driver who say he is inept he's very good, on the road courses for the majority of the time. Motegi being a track, that officially hasn't been run in the Indycars on iRacing to date. So for some of these drivers, it's going to be a 62 lap.
Got a collision!
Big crash there between Danny Edge and Joe Branch. That is going to put both of those drivers out of the race. In fact, for Joe Branch, that is going to be the end of his race there. Huge crash between those two drivers. And it just looks as though I couldn't even see where Danny Edge was. I'll tell you what, this reminds me of an incident with you. However, you were lucky way to get away with it a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, with Chris Partridge in the it was spinning in the Corvettes, but that being a slightly different one because Dan Lienz just seemed to have missed a braking spot and just went through the chicane. He just cut straight through the grass.
So a huge crash there for both those drivers. We'll get the replay back on your screen from a couple of angles. It just looked as though for Joe Branch, it's one of those things. These last couple of corners that you cannot see that a car's gone off track until they're spearing across you at 100 and something miles an hour. In fact, Dan Lienz was well on the brakes.
It looked like he didn't have any brakes.
Yeah, he missed the braking zone completely for turn 13, and I mean, that bit of grass and gravel just doesn't slow you down.
Let's have a helicopter view of that one. That's what should be interesting to watch.
So Dan Lienz, I mean, normally regarded as one of the safer drivers in this series, so it's not something you expect him to see. But as they come down until they find a couple of corners, it just almost looked. If there was bad blood between those drivers, it almost looked as though he took him out. But I'm sure that wasn't the case.
Yeah, it's not the case, but that's exactly what I was gonna say. That looked like 2 years of frustration, and that was finally the payback moment. That's what it looked like.
And let's not forget, in Spain, tensions always run high in open wheel series. Obviously, famously at Suzuki, you have Ayrton Senna in 1989, 1990, but Dan Lienz is circulating still on the racetrack. Joe Branch is also still circulating on the racetrack. However, that won't be helping his off-road capabilities with a huge dent in his right-hand side pod.
Outside of the screen, meanwhile, Daniel Lee retook the third position after Jussi Nieminen did his pit stop.
So, Daniel Lee, now that gap between those two drivers is 14 seconds. Esteban Balao, however, he has yet to make that journey down towards pit road, and it'll be interesting to see whether Daniel Lee can get ahead in that sequence of pit stops. I'm doing the maths on myself, and the gap between those two drivers is currently sat at about 35 seconds, so it's going to be close. Esteban Balao certainly isn't going to have as comfortable a lead as before the sequence of pit stops started. And to have a look at Daniel Lee's last couple of lap times, he's been 1 minute 37 to 1 minute 38 yet again. In fact, he's coming up now behind Dan Lienz, and this is the worst portion of the racetrack that you can do that on. Managing to flick it down to the inside there in that number 64 main cap machine. To see Dan Lienz going just off track again for a bit more off-roading. Perhaps he's trying out the Joe Branch tyre special, but it looks as though Daniel Lee, I'm not sure. Do you think he can do it?
It's going to be close. I mean, now Esteban Balao's last time around was 136.949, so it would be interesting to see if Daniel is able to respond to that. Not on this lap, I would assume, because since he had the lap car in the twisty section. So it depends on. What do you think? Is Esteban Balao going to be able to make it through with that stop?
We are getting to the point where you're definitely in that one-stop window for Daniel Lee. It could just be able to do a one-stop. He's going to have to be very careful on his right foot, though. In fact, Daniel Lee's last lap was 1 minute 38.1, so he didn't lose too much there behind Dan Lienz, but still enough when you're considering that every half a second that Daniel Lee's losing now, he will have to fight later on to gain, which will be on more worn tyres as well. Esteban Balao, he is coming down that back straightaway once again, getting a little bit of a wiggle. down over the crest, coming down now into turn number 11. This is one of the scariest corners on the racetrack. You break it to the right hand side, now you flick it, you go all the way out towards the wall, flick it to the left. That first bit's flat out, and unlike what down at the entrance, you have to flick it left while braking once again to then hit that right hand side curve coming off of turn number 14. Balal stays out for another lap, and this time by a 1 minute 36.718. Balal is picking up the pace here.
Yeah, he surely is. And speaking of that last corner of Motegi, people always hype Air Rouge at Spa for being the one of the most difficult corners in the world. I actually find it fairly simple compared to the Motegi's last corner, which is especially with tin-top cars, the Corvette 4GTs, V8s. That's one of the trickiest corners because, like you said, you have to be on the brakes while turning the car in, slowing the car down to the left side first, then you have to flip the car over to the right-hand side and still be on the brakes at the same time. That's not that many different lines you can take through there if you want to not to lose 1 second a lap, or unless you're in the middle of overtaking, which is not a good idea to do in that corner. But that's one of the trickiest corners in iRacing, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, that entire sequence of corners, I remember being before.
Esteban Ballo has a huge sideways coming out of turn 9 there.
That was very
surely it's going to
there.
cost him time.
Managing to save it momentarily. In fact, I just having a look at Ballo's last lap. It didn't come up on my screen because I'm sure he had a slight off-track incident, but his last lap was only 3 tenths of a second slower than Nico Brand's fastest lap, so Ballo can pick up the pace when he needs to. However, he's now 27 seconds behind the race lead.
It will be interesting to see what this lap is going to be as he comes across the finish line, because that slide is surely going to cost him time.
A 1 minute 36, 1 minute 37.8, a full second he lost there with that slide. And that is not
by the way, Nico Brand lost the lead. Nico Brand came into the pits, so Esteban Ballo temporarily is going to be the race leader.
So while we were paying too much attention there to Esteban Ballo's sliding actions, Nico Brandt makes his first pit stop of the day. Having a look back, no issues for him. He's down and away. And in fact, gap between those two drivers, if you want to know, about 4 seconds on the racetrack. So that gives you some idea of the time it takes to make a pit stop here, as it was 27 seconds, I believe, was the time between those two drivers. So when you consider the time between Daniel Lee and Esteban Ballo, I think that Ballo's got enough time in his hands now, and a bit more.
Yeah, Ballo did an excellent job the last few laps. Daniel Lee's last lap, even though Esteban Ballo lost about a second because of that slide he had, Daniel Lee still managed only a 138.535, which is 7 tenths of a second slower than Esteban Ballo's last lap. So I think Esteban has done a good enough job to secure that second position, at least for now.
Oh yeah, definitely. And for this middle part of the season especially, Ballo is one of those drivers where when you need to get yourself through fields and push when you need to, Ballo is one of those drivers that can really handle pressure. And if you want to talk about a bit more pressure, next week, as you see Ballo there coming down into pit lane from the second position, oh, he's going to have to be careful there, because it looks like he cut one of the entry cones. He might get himself an unsafe pit entry, but it's going to be very close there.
No, actually, you won't get anything. That's one of the stupidest thing of this track when iRacing modeled this track, because I actually tested this track with 4 GTs, and I found out that if you just make sure the speed is on the limiter, you can actually cut the whole last chicane coming into the pits through the grass. No, you get a 1x, but you don't get a slowdown, you don't get an unsafe pit exit or entry, you don't get anything other than the 1x. So if you really are in the heat of the battle and you're confident that you're able to steer the car through the corner, through the small chicane over the grass, you actually can gain over a second there with the price of 1x. So pretty stupid move from iRacing, in my opinion, to leave that grass section without a slowdown area, but that's the way it goes.
So Esteban Ballo is back and away, and if you want to know what the gap is between himself and Daniel Lee, it is at least 15 seconds at the moment. So not only did Ballo keep that second position, in fact he's managed to gain a ton of time, and it's pretty much going to secure his second position for the moment, because let's not forget, Ballo is now on fresh rubber. Yes, he's got more fuel, but Daniel Lee is on worn tyres. And this is one of those tracks where you're going to need the grip because you've got big braking zones and you've got big fast corners as well. And you've not... One of the few things this track doesn't have, Yoni, is slow, tricky technical sections of the racetrack. Everything's either a big stop or a fast sweeping corner.
Yeah, the only not so simple corner complex is the 7 and 8, which is not that slow and tricky either. It's basically just slowing down, dropping a few gears, and then coasting through the so-called SS, the American way to put the name of the corners. So going through the SS, 7 and 8, is not as tricky as it might seem, because you don't brake in the middle of the corner. You don't go on the throttle in the middle of the corner. You just coast through it until you see the exit of turn 8. So yeah, this track is basically pretty much full throttle brakes, but at the same time it does provide an overtaking opportunities, unlike in some of the tracks where you have lots of fast sweeping corners, but you cannot set up a passing over those, unlike in here.
And that is in complete comparison to the other track in Japan that we will be visiting on the 5th of August, Suzuka. Suzuka is one of those tracks where everything is very sweeping, very technical track. In fact, last year, Dave Jinks, having a look at him now, currently sitting in the 6th position, he scored his first ever victory in the Afterburn IndyCar Series there. And confirmation of that gap is actually not as big as I thought. It's only up by about 11 seconds now. So Daniel Lee has been able to preserve that gap but not eat anything into it. But now it'll be a case of, can he gain some time while Esteban Balao has that full tank of fuel?
I guess that remains to be seen, but while you mentioned Suzuka being the exact opposite of this track, I have to say that a lot of people in the community pretty much dislike this track because of its funky flow, if we call it that way. But then again, those same people love Suzuka, where in fact I love this track and I hate Suzuka because of the fact that Suzuka is a narrow. It's full of fast corners with pretty much zero possibilities to overtake, where we see on the screens Dave Jinks going into the pits and through that grass chicane, which like I said, you can cut through it if you're just confident that you can keep your car straight.
Yeah, so, yes, Suzuka, in fact, Suzuka and Motegi actually have themselves some similarities if you break the tracks down. Sector 1 at Suzuka is very twisty and technical. In fact, it's very similar to Sector 2 here. And then you've got yourself, the big straightaways with the huge braking zones. You can compare the last sector here in some ways to the last sector at Suzuka. But it's one of these clear definitions of Japanese racetracks. They almost can break the tracks down into very big sections just by the type of corner layouts that there is. Dave Jinks is down and away from his pit box, back onto the racetrack. Currently starting now in the 7th position as Julian Pham ahead of him, I believe, is yet to pit.
Yep, Julian Pham is the only car, I'll take that back. Julian Pham and John Ailes are the ones without a pit stop yet, but I'm sure it's going to be 1 or 2 laps before we see those guys in. Yeah,
we're approaching half distance here at the Indy Grand Prix of Motegi here on Glacier TV. Will Vincent and not Doyle Johnson. Doyle Johnson's too lazy to turn up. Will Vincent, very close there for Nico Brand from hitting Steve Clates, coming down into turn number 2. Inches between those two drivers. It's Will Vincent and Yoni Batman in the booth. But Nico Brand, that was one of those heart-in-the-mouth moments, trying to overtake Steve Clates. It looks like he just got himself a little bit tight in the centre of the corner there. And just how close was that to ending yet another race for Nico Brand?
Oh, we're going to have an instant replay of that incident. Let's have a quick look. See exactly what happened there.
As you see it coming up on your screen now, coming down into turn number 2, you had Steve Claes on his right hand side. It looked as though just Brandt got himself a little bit tight in the centre of turn number 2.
Let's take another one. That was too short.
And he just brushed up a little bit but missed Steve Claes. I'm not sure whether or not he was clear or not, but that was close between those two drivers. Literally about 6 inches between those two on the racetrack, and both Claes and Nico Brandt must have skipped a beat there. However, both drivers managed to get through okay. Nico Brand is still your race leader, and the gap between himself and Istvan Balal is 27 seconds, as meanwhile, Joe Branch coming down into pit road once again. I believe he is now going to try and top up on Sunoco rest gas and get himself 4 fresh tyres.
Yeah, looking at from the chopper view, it didn't look like they were going side by side, close by. It almost looked like the lap car just slightly missed the brake spot, went slightly wide, was supposed to open the door for Nico Brand, and Nico was unprepared for that, so Nico had to basically slow down just a fraction more in the middle of the corner to avoid hitting his rear. But yeah, that was a scary moment for Nico there.
So it looks as though, in fact, Joe Branch is now out of the race. As you see John Hales there, he is taking over duties of the off-road drift champion. I think these drivers now to come to Japan, they always want to do the off-road drifting style, but it's by no means the fastest way around the racetrack. And in fact, Joe, looks as though your day's done. You had a huge moment there in the final corner. I'm guessing you just didn't see Dan Liench.
Oh man, no, he wasn't gonna make the turn. He bounced off my car to turn. He didn't have a chance. But I seen him and I knew he was coming. I just tried to get as far left as possible and hope he could make the turn, and he still plowed into me.
And just how bad was the damage to the right-hand side of that number 27 afterburn machine?
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I tried to soldier on for a while, and then I just couldn't take it no more.
And it's one of those tracks, you know, road courses you do specialise pretty much as much as on the oval. As one of those drivers that can adapt well to both of them. But what are the challenges like here at Motegi? It's pretty different to a lot of the road courses we frequent, because it's not really got too much of a flow to it. It's very stop and start in places.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. I struggled. I can't. Certain turns you feel like you want to let it roll through, and then I end up going off because I'm going too wide, which I did multiple times. So yeah, frustrating, but you just need more lap time. But I didn't really want to continue to get lap time in a damaged car.
And next week we are going under lights at Richmond, a track which I know you like. You've always been one of those short track specialists. How do you think you've done it? We've had a bit of time to prepare this week. How do you think you're going to likely fare once we get there for round 16?
I love Richmond. I hope I'll be able to make that one. This is my first afterburn race I've been able to make, so if I can make it there, I think I'll be pretty competitive.
Well, 10-4, feel free to stick about if you wish. Meanwhile, Nico Brandt is still your race leader. His last lap at 1 minute 36.893. Gap between himself and Istvan Balal is now up to 26.5 seconds. Daniel Lee has faded a little bit. That gap between those two drivers, second and third, now up to 12 seconds on the racetrack. Daniel Lee is kind of like tete-a-tete once again. Daniel Lee's last lap at 1 minute 37.3. Istvan Balal, though, he really has picked up the pace. He did a 1 minute 36.663 that last time by. In comparison, that makes him the fastest driver on the racetrack right now, as Nico Brandt just did a 1 minute 37.1. And Yoni, if Istvan Balal had that speed early on in this race, he would really be able to contend with Nico Brandt for this race victory.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's just a matter of a lack of practice, so that he's just still in the learning process and just getting speed when the race progresses. But yeah, if he'd had that pace, it would have been a totally different story for Nico. Might have been actually making a few more mistakes, or maybe he was just speed up even more, but who knows.
And in some ways, Balal's taking the Motegi approach, almost learning the track as he goes along. And one of those things that Jana Motegi, who unfortunately can't be here today, always seems to get himself faster through the course of a race. But how much does that, is it rhythm or momentum? You know, once you settle down into the race, is it one of those things that you generally just find that grip and that balance through the race, and how are you feeling in comparison to other competitors?
Well, I can only speak for myself, but I mean, usually when I get in a race car, which I know already, just don't have the setup for the track yet. Let's say I spend 15 minutes on track for practicing, and then I jump in a race. Usually, it's the speed just sort of once you get in. I mean, let's take Motegi for example. The turn 1 is tricky because it's a double apex. So it takes like a 5 to 10 laps to find the fastest line through the corner. Once you find the fastest line, then it's a matter of actually sticking into that line. And once you finally stick into that, there's actually cases where your tires start to burn off, so the fastest line might not be a possibility anymore. Then you find you think you go slightly wide and go, oh crap, now I'm gonna lose time. Then you come out of the second apex and goes like, oh, what the hell, it's green. So you're actually gaining time. So it's also a matter of luck. Yeah, like you said, once you get the track, once you learn the track properly, after that it's mainly about rhythm. I mean, personally, if a lap car just misses one of my laps badly, it might take me 2 to 3 laps to find the rhythm again properly.
Nico Brand, he looks as though he's backed off. His last lap of 1 minute 37.7. Istvan Bala, in fact, he only did a 1 minute 37.7 himself like last time by. But these two drivers, you know, it would be interesting if they were closer together. Istvan Bala has got that very unique paint scheme at the moment, the Be a Voice for Animals number 22 machine. In fact, he's had some great paint schemes this season. Sebastian Vettel, take note, because Istvan Bala really does know how to make his car and his helmets look pretty. Having a look back through the field, currently got 4 drivers on the lead lap. Jussi Niederman is the final driver shown on the lead lap. He is really faded in this race since the start, having some difficult times. And having a look back at his pit stop, in fact, he lost himself quite a lot of time down pit road. Perhaps he got himself a speeding penalty as he did so, but he is in danger of going a lap down. In fact, he is only about 5 seconds from doing so. That will leave us just 3 drivers on the lead lap here. No caution to talk about here today. In fact, we've not had a caution on the road courses all season long. I know that the race controller decided that if there was an incident involving more than 3 drivers, they would throw the caution, but that hasn't been the case this season to date. And a little bit back through the field, I believe Julian Pham has now made that pit stop, so he is resumed 7th position, with Dave Jinks now in 6th. And those 2 drivers, they're not separated by too far on the racetrack themselves. In fact, Dave Jinks, you know, even though he's got that gap, one mistake by him, that will allow Julian Pham to pounce. And both those drivers, Jinks and Pham, having a good solid day here today, and it really does show that if you can keep that car on the kind of grey shiny stuff, you can get yourself some good positions, and especially in these smaller fields.
Yeah, that policy almost applies to every single racetrack and ovals, roads, and almost any car you drive in. Like a good example is my fellow club member who just started on the trucks in the Pocono Raceway, and he was struggling like in almost every single race I saw him go out, because he tried to stick with the guys that he just, like, let's say some like positions 3 and 4 and 5 did a mistake, he got by them in the first lap of the race. He started from behind, then he did everything he can to just trying to compete with those guys, and ended up being in the wall. And then I just said, like, for Christ's sakes, man, just take any setup you wish, just learn to drive it within the track lines, and just bring your car home into the start and finish line, and you see miracles. And that guy just after he just like eased off the pace and just like accepted the fact that he's not the fastest guy out there, and he just brought his car home. He had like 200 I rating going up, and all he had to do was just take solid finishes, and the faster guys in front of him just kept wrecking.
And to be fact, that has been the case this season in the Afterburn Indycar Series, where the drivers who've just been able to get themselves those solid race finishes have been the ones who've moved themselves up the standings. I remember I had a similar experience to that at Pocono myself, actually, in the IndyCars, about 9 months or so ago. Loaded the wrong setup into my car by mistake, didn't realise, but even though I was 2 seconds, well, about a second off the pace each lap, the fact that all these drivers ahead of me kept on deciding they wanted to mate with other cars meant that I ended up coming home second, a little bit through strategy, a little bit through just, you know, keeping the car on that grey shiny tarmac. having a look at the championship standings overall, it shows a very similar picture. I mean, there are some great drivers in this series who have had difficult weeks, like we talked about. Nico Brandt currently sat in the 5th position overall. Jussi Nimmermann is currently leading the Road Course Championship, and even though he's sat in the 4th position, he's going to retain that coming out of this race as it stands. Dave Jinks, he is currently leading the combined championship with John Ailes in 2nd. Dave Jinks is likely to at least keep himself in the running for that coming out of this race, especially as like the Warner Crossno couldn't make that today. Drivers like Julien Pham have just been able to drive themselves around the track, get themselves some solid finishes. I mean, that if you look at the columns on the championship standings, for me, the most important one always is that top 5, because yes, you might be able to get pole positions, yes, you might be able to win races, but if you can't get that consistency with top 5s, you're not going to be able to get yourself, into championship hunts. Just ask, let's take the NASCAR example. People like Dale Jr., who haven't won a race, but currently is sitting 1 in the championship just because that consistency's there. And Nimmermann right now, that thing that he needs to do is just not worry and keep that car on the racetrack, because every time you finish a race in a top 5 position, you're going to get yourself a serious haul of points. Meanwhile, running through your top 5, Nico Brandt is still your race leader, gap between himself and Istvan Balow, 27.750 last time by. Daniel Lee, he is now fallen 13 seconds behind Istvan Balow, currently sat in the 3rd position. Jussi Nimmermann about to go a lap down, struggling in the second half of this race, currently sat in the 4th position. Steve Clays is in the 5th spot. We saw Clays getting very close to the rear of Jussi Nimmermann about 20 laps ago before he put it into the grass. Clays has fallen back ever since. In fact, his last couple of laps have been pretty slow. He's been struggling quite a lot. And Dave Jinks is in 6th, Julien Pham 7th, Danny Edge in 8th, John Ailes in 9th, Brad Sanford in 10th. 2 timers to talk about. Joe Bryant from the 27 machine, he is classified as out of the race. And also Maurizio Meliz, he got himself a black flag for contact earlier on when he pretty much punted Dan Yench off the racetrack. He is also retired out of the race.
Yeah, by the way, as we see Nico Brandt putting a lap on Jussi Nimmermann, you said that Jussi Nimmermann lost a ton of time during the pit stops, but as I'm looking at the pit times, Jussi Nimmermann actually had the 2nd fastest pit stop of them all, 6.2 seconds compared to the top 3 in front of him, 7.0 to 7.9 seconds. So he must have had just well, it's not an unfamiliar scenario that the people just either ignore or just forget to practice the pit entry, which is quite a crucial thing, especially in NASCARs during green flag pit stops, and in the roadside especially, since everyone has to make the pit stop. So lots of people just tend to forget that and put it aside and think it's basically irrelevant, but once you're in a close battle on the racetrack, that does pay off. And my guess is that Jussi just took the entry chicane slightly too cautiously and lost like a few seconds there.
Yeah, and completely have to echo those sentiments. Pit road is one of those places where you can always gain a ton of time. Not only is it one of those things that demands practice, but it's that adaptability as well. You're never going to enter pit road with exactly the same grip on your tyres that you've had, the 2, 3, 4 previous attempts that you've done so. I see a car there just in the gravel. I think he's got out of it though. That was Danny Yench by the look of it. But coming down into pit road, I mean, you can gain yourself a ton of time coming onto pit road, so long as you can hit those lines perfectly coming in. Here you've got the additional difficulty of the entrance, the tight, tricky chicane, but getting down to hit the limiter, tracks like Road America, for example, where it's straight up onto pit road, you've still got to be very careful that you don't get yourself a black flag speeding penalty. But then coming out, that first lap with fresh tyres, you'll know this from your GT day driving days, but it's that first lap when you have additional grip on that car, you can set some of your fastest laps on the track, and how you drive those first couple of laps really does dictate where you finish in the standings.
Indeed, and with the current build that is released by iRacing, what's good about the new tire model build is the fact that not only is the first lap is slightly faster. It's not that much it's not that fast as it used to be when you had like a 1.5 seconds of advantage in the outlap, but it is like a half a second to 1 second faster depending on how much you want to burn your tires. But from what I've noticed that it does give you an advantage, but you also have a full tank of fuel. But if your driving style is conservative in terms of tire wear, you are actually able to nail pretty much identical, if not even faster lap times at the end of the stint if you have rubber left in the tires, because then the fuel load has burned off. So so you have the speed advantages on the straightaways and on the exits of corners. So it's actually a pleasant thing that not to have only the outlap as your high card. So you can, like you said, you can use the outlap to your advantage, but then you risk of getting too much heat in the tires in the next couple of laps, and that can play out a crucial part in the latter stage of your fuel stint.
And as you clearly mentioned, being conservative on your tires is something that these drivers have had to adapt to quite a lot over the last 7-8 weeks, as you cannot afford to put as much pressure, especially on those two front tires, as you used to be able to do so. In fact, when we go to Richmond next week for round 16 of the Arctic IndyCar Series, you will notice how the days of just pushing those tires and using the weight jacket and the anti-roll bars to, adapt to you just burning off the rubber, they are all completely gone. As soon as you get yourself too much heat, especially in that right front tyre on ovals, or both those tyres on the road courses, you just run out of grip, and you are going to be bouncing along those gravel traps before you know it. And that all comes back to how you approach the lap. If you're a conservative driver and you brake, even just 10 metres earlier, and see Nico Bryant coming down into turn number just coming out of turn number 1 with 20 laps left to go here at Twin Motegi. The drivers who can just brake 10 metres earlier, you might lose yourself, half a tenth here, half a tenth there, but you brake 10 metres too late and you're locking up those front tyres, you are going to run out of grip before you know it. Looking back through the field, Istvan Balau has now got himself up to 13 and a bit seconds ahead of Daniel Lee in the battle for the second position. Jussi Nimmermann is currently sat in the 4th position. Steve Clays is running out your top 5.
Yeah, like I said about the brake markers, that like I said, if you brake slightly too late, especially when you're planning on overtaking somebody, if you're gonna start braking slightly too late, you have to brake just a 5% more than you normally would, and once you lock up the brakes, you have to lift completely or almost completely to release the lock on the tires, and already that means you're gonna be like 5 to 10 meters off the track before the car settles in to turn in properly. But yeah, like if you just manage to find yourself a rhythm where you just don't hop on the brakes that heavily, just start braking slightly early, but just keep braking steadily through the turn to get the car settled in. And by settling in, I mean the weight transfer of the car. If you go heavily in the brakes, the majority of the weight of the car is going to lie on your front tires, and then when you go on the throttle again, the car is still light, so it tends to snap slightly more, and also it's going to burn up the front tires. But just brake tad earlier, and the balance of the car is not on the front tires as much, so the turn in is much smoother, the exit of the corner is much smoother, and you'll notice the difference in the tire wear.
Keeping an eye on Steve Clays momentarily, just having a look at his laps. He is trying still to close down Jussi Nimmermann. In fact, his last lap was a 1 minute 38.2. We'll get some more accurate data as he's coming out the final corner now, past the start-finish line, and his lap this time by was a 1 minute 41.9, so slower that time by. But when he is not making, he's had a couple of mistakes, but when he's not making them, he is actually faster than Nimmermann in front. Nimmermann's last lap was a 1 minute 39.5, and that is kind of the standard pace he is setting. Now, had Clays not made some of the mistakes he has made, I think he would actually have been able to close Nimmermann down quite a bit. However, he's just coming to turn number 4 right now. Nimmermann is coming down already into turn number 9. That's one of those things for Clays. I think that you know, consistency really is the key today, and I think Clays might have just made himself one or two mistakes a little bit too much. And I'm just having a look back to those times where he's lost time by going off track. If he'd made, you know, a couple less of those, he really could have been on the hunt.
Yeah, looking at Steve Clays through this race, it almost reminds me of my team member Joni Hagner, who loves to almost any car he drives, he just loves to treat the throttle almost as an elevator button. Either it's on or it's off. And looking at Steve Clays through this race, it almost looks like exactly like that. Every corner he comes out of, he just puts the car into like a 10% of slide. And that's not good for tires. I mean, it might be fun to drive, but it's not the fastest way around with the new tire models in any car.
Yeah, with the 650 brake horsepower coming through those engines, as he gets it very sideways through the final corner. That is not what you want to be doing here at Motegi. As you slide the car out of those corners, see a car coming out of pit lane ahead of Clays. That is Jussi Nuinen making his second stop of the day by the look of it. That puts him right into the graph of Steve Clays. But every time you put the power on and you slide those tyres a bit, the spin going through those tyres as you're building up speed, that does a lot of damage to those tyres as well. In fact, almost as much as locking up the brakes. And if you're going through some of these faster sections of the racetrack, it could be a point where you've just overheated those tyres up, you know, 2 degrees too much, and that's when the grip starts falling off dramatically, because these Firestone Firehawks do have a very small operating window. However, this is going to be interesting now. I am not sure whether Clays needs to make a second stop. I'm having a look back at his lap time to see where he made his stop. In fact, he did it on lap number 17. So we do expect him to come down pit road once again. But he is now all over the rear of Jussi Nuinen, and it's going to be that case now for the number 82 Club Finland driver, that he just cannot afford to make a mistake.
Yeah, and speaking to add something to the sliding part, where I see Steve Clays in the screen all the time sliding his tires. Once you slide the tires with the new tire model, the trick is that once you get into the slide, even though you correct it immediately, you have like a good 5 or 10 seconds where you have about 50% of the grip you normally have, because you get some surface heat into the tires. And that's one of the I'm not sure about the open wheelers, but the tin top cars, if you just manage to correct a small slide, you're in a world of hurt with having to deal with one small slide, and then through next short straightaway. Yep, overtaking coming over here.
Yep, there he is, he's passing. Nuinen got right into turn number 1, so to interrupt you, and it looked as though Nuinen was just, you know, half a foot offline coming into that corner. But once you're on the dirty side of that racetrack, there is just no grip then, and Clays managed to get himself past. But you are completely right, and I think one of the few things that saved Clays in this race is the fact that you have got straightaways, that some very long straightaways down out of turn number 9 and down the front straightaway. In fact, also the two afterwards, that are kind of about that 10-15 second window, so he's almost been able to recover from it.
Yeah, those long straightaways gives you the extra 2 degrees of cooldown that you really need for the tires if you have a slide. But like I said, if you get a slide, let's say into the corner 7 or 8, you're in a world of hurt before you get into the back straight, because you have a hairpin and 2 sweeping corners, and your tires are not going to be happy when you're going the throttle after a slide. Those tires are going to slide out on the exit of every corner.
Looks as though Nuinen is out of tyres. He's got a couple of issues with those, because he has been sliding that car around the racetrack dramatically as well. In fact, Clays has been able to put about a 7/10 of a second gap over Nuinen as they come into turn number 11. I think that's Steve Clays saying he is in fact coming down pit road this time by, so Nuinen gets away scot-free. And what I was saying about Nuinen earlier on is he just needed not to make a mistake, because Clays was going to have to come down to make that second pit stop. As he comes down pit road now, 37 miles an hour, so slow there for Clays. And this is one of the slowest pit lanes on iRacing, and it really does test the driver's patience, as you just want to get back out onto the racetrack.
Yeah, and I was just about to say that if Steve Clays did not have to make that second pit stop, that would have been, I was supposed to say, even though he completed the pass on Jussi Nuinen, that would have, I would have said that don't count out this fight yet, because having to see what Steve Clays has done through the race, sliding all over the place, going off tracks, and clipping curves and stuff, My guess is that during the next 10 laps we would have seen Jussi either getting past or closing right up as Steve would have continued his slide. I'm not sure if he's just set up the car slightly too tight or what, but yeah, like I said, that's not the fastest way to drive an open wheeler.
Oh no, and just to give you an update as well, Daniel Lee has made his second pit stop as well, working around the outside of down the engine into turn number 6. Unlike on the ovals, the weight jacker isn't as useful here because you're turning left as well as right. When you go back down to the basic principles of the weight jacker, what it does is move the weight distribution on the right rear either up or down, which transfers the weight of the car from either the right front to the left front or vice versa. Now on the road courses, that isn't going to be as useful because you're turning both left and right. However, you have still got the anti-roll bars for his front and rears. Look out, Nico Bram is coming down to put another lap in Brad Sanford, catching him through that 7, 8, 9 complex once again, and he's been able to get away with that one. But the front and the rear anti-roll bars, they are still open for business, and you can really dramatically change the effect of the car by using either a bit more positive front anti-roll bar to make the car a bit stiffer in the corners, or using the rear anti-roll bar to free it up. If I was Clay, I would start using that front anti-roll bar a bit, just because he's sliding a lot coming out the corners. And let's not forget as well, he could have set the differential in that car coming into this race, and it looks as though he's perhaps set that diff just a little bit too low as well.
Indeed, and I'm surprised either he does not, either he's uncomfortable with setting the using the front anti-roll bars or the rear ones in the roadside, or then he simply just decided to ignore that and just struggle with what he has.
And in fact, with the new tyre model, that's one of the things that I personally noticed, is that John Hale's just going off track momentarily there through turn number 2 and 3. One of the things I have noticed is that John Hale's there just having a lap put up on him. The differential especially is a lot more prevalent now as it used to be, because you used to be able to get away with sliding the car coming off the corners, and for most drivers it's something that you could deal with so long as you could catch it. Now you have to really start using things like the diff and those front and rear anti-roll bars, and all the way down to setting the preload in the garage for either the front or the rear bar really does affect the balance of the car. In fact, just a couple of clicks to it, can make a car from being stable completely undrivable. However, one driver that really has kind of sussed out today, Nico Bram, he is currently working his 49th lap of 62 here at Twin Ring Motegi. We don't expect him to stop again here today. If he does, it will be an absolute splash and dash, but he is charging his way through the field. We have only got now 3 drivers on the lead lap, and Daniel Lee is only 12 seconds from being put a lap down himself.
Yeah, and even if Nico Brandt decides to make a splash and dash, he will still not maintain the lead, I would say.
In fact, he could have done what the Corvette did at the end of the Le Mans 24 hours, hopped up, let someone else drive for the last couple. Car in the wall. So that is Steve Plays in the wall there, in that bright yellow car, and that's the reason why I saw it. But just coming out of turn number 1 and clipping the curb on exit, spinning it around and sideways into the wall, got himself some suspension damage and some left side pod damage there. He's out now of the race, and that you almost expected that to happen. He was literally, one mistake away from putting it into the wall. I wouldn't call that mistakes. It was more one slide away from putting it into the wall, and it looks as though he just got a little bit too wide in the curb, and his luck ran out.
Yeah, his rear end just looked through the race and it's way too stiff. It just went over the curb, and as soon as the rear tires went over the curb, he just snapped the car like he had no grip at all.
And the reference I was making to Nico Brandt, for those of you who didn't watch the 24 Hours of Le Mans, I was just talking about the Corvette who, on the last lap of the Le Mans 24 Hours, decided they were going to do themselves a driver change because they were pretty much guaranteed their class victory. Nico Brandt, I was saying, could pretty much do exactly the same thing here, working lap number 50 of 62 here. The gap between himself and Istvan Balau is 38 seconds on the racetrack. Nico Brandt is not going to take anything for granted, though. He has been in situations before where his luck has run out at the worst possible time, As let's not forget as well, in fact, at Alton Park, his luck ran out before the green flag even came out, with just putting that power down too early and hitting that retaining wall on the outside. In fact, it's really attenuated he hit. But Nico Brandt, 12 laps left to go here, and as it stands at the moment, finally he's going to be able to get himself back to winning ways in the Afterburn IndyCar series. He's having a good run on the ovals as well, but his bad luck has just continued there as well. But going to a track like Richmond next week is a track which I know he's always been pretty good at. So drivers like Nico Brandt, in fact a lot of these roadies, those short oval tracks are the ones that the road guys can adapt to a lot more quickly, because you know those short ovals require a lot more driving precision, which is of course what you learn on the road side of things.
Yeah, looking at the stats of Nico Brandt this season, has no wins at all. Like I said, first victory of the IndyCar season this season coming for him, one top 5 finish. But that's not the whole truth. I mean, like we talked about, Nico Brandt has been fast through the season, but some unbelievable bad luck on every time he's been dominant.
Istvan Bala, who's currently sat in the second position. Let's not forget the craziest race in the universe back at Mosport, where Istvan Bala scored his own win of the season. And Bala's got himself 4 top 5 finishes, which is putting him 3rd in the Road Championship standings. He's not really run the ovals this season, which is why overall that position is a lot lower. He's only sat in the 12th spot. But for Istvan Bala, you know, he's had himself some good runs and he's had some good charges through the field. And I think that second position right now is well deserved.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, Istvan Bala has been one of the chargers in the series, and he's been fun to watch in almost every race. And like you mentioned, the Mosport race where he scored the victory, that was a that was the one that whoever watching this one and now hears for the first time about the Mosport race, I would strongly recommend you go to Glacier TV video archive and download that one, because that was fun as hell. Every time the commentator mentions somebody's name doing an excellent job, as immediately they go out in either turn 2 or turn 3.
Yes, for more information, go to glaciertv.com, click on the archive, or go to YouTube and search Glacier TV Archives. It was round 3, I believe, of the Afterburn IndyCar series from Mosport, which was held on the 17th of March, if you want some random stats. Meanwhile, back here at Twin Motegi, Nico Brandt is duo race leader, Istvan Bala in 2nd, Daniel Lee in 3rd, Yusin Uru in 4th, and Dave Jinks is currently sat in the 5th position, with Julian Pham in 6th. Now, we haven't talked about the Motegi Challenge yet, and as it stands, it is going to be very, very close, but Brad Sanford looks like he might just be able to get enough points to keep that prize, as even though he's sat all the way down in the 10th positions, Nico Brandt is indeed down pit lane. Nico Brandt is down in pit lane, so he is going to have to make that one more stop, and Istvan Bala, in fact, has already been in pit lane, so he's come down, quick splash of fuel with 10 laps to go. Getting himself, that was literally just a splash and some tyres there, so this will be a time where you'll expect Brandt to just put that hammer down. Sebastian Vettel-esque, in fact a fellow countryman of Sebastian Vettel, expects him to try and set the fastest lap in these last 10 of the race here at Motegi.
Did they give the lead lap back to somebody?
Pardon?
Did the Nico Brandt's pit stop give somebody their lead lap back?
It looks as though it might have just have been able to give one driver a lap back, but no, Daniel Lee is still on the lead lap. In fact, there's still only 3 drivers on the lead lap. Yusin Uru is still a lap down in 4th. In fact, Danny Ench getting lapped again. He is currently scored as 4 laps down. Danny Ench has had a difficult day here today, being involved in an incident which was not his fault on lap number 2 with Maurizio Melias, who pretty much just didn't bother to turn into the corner, and then Danny Ench was involved in an incident with Joe Branch, which pretty much was his fault, unfortunately, as he just couldn't find the grip to take the final couple of corners. If you look on the left-hand side of his car, he's still got substantial left-hand side damage, but still lapping, doing laps in the 1 minute 44s, which, considering the damage to that car, is pretty much respectable.
the next lap of Nico O'Brien we have to go on board with him, because he's surely going to hot lap himself the new fastest lap of the race, which currently is on his name, 136.196, and this one is going to be a charger, I would say.
So we're going on board with Nico right now as they come down into turn number 1. We're going to shut up for a minute and let you enjoy. So as they come down, as he comes down across the line, 136.6, and not quite fast enough there. But still, I think that is one of the fastest laps we have seen by Nico O'Brien all day today. Definitely in that window. As fast lap 136.196. So, I mean, to be fair though, let's consider the fact that he's so far up front, he doesn't need to hot lap that much. Himself and Esteban Balao, 48 seconds on the racetrack.
Yeah, he lost. He still did a 136.6. Where I was looking at that lap time on board with Nico, he actually, my guess it would be that he lost at least 0.4 of a second in that turn 9 hairpin, where he went very, very wide. As we're currently going through section 7 and 8. Last time around, he did not clip the curve on the left-hand side there. Might have cost him like half a tenth or something like that. But here, going into this corner, yep. Last time around he took it very, very wide there, and my guess is that that's where he lost the lap time.
Nico O'Brien, one of the precision experts, can really, really drive not only this car, but many other cars as well. In fact, we saw him last season racing in Talk Creek Racing in the Spring Super Cup from Talk Creek Racing, doing a great job in that as he's coming down into turn number 11 once again.
This actually might be faster than the last one.
Yeah. Bringing it out to the wall, pretty much flat-footing it through 12, clipping the curb nicely on 13, doing the same in 14, straighten the car out beautifully down the front straightaway to get maximum torque as he comes across the line once again. A 1:36 slower.
900 of a second slower.
Games with us now. I think he's just playing games with us now. So we're going to step aside from Nico O'Brien, and he'll probably do a 1:35 again. But still, great driving by Nico. Esteban Balao still sat in the second position.
Whoa,
and in fact,
what has happened to Esteban Balao?
Yeah, in fact, last time a 1:46.069. He is now right in the clutches of Daniel Lee late on in this race. And having a look back to see just what happened to Balao, but must have been down in turn number 1 by the look of it.
10 seconds in it.
Yeah. In fact, he's had 2 laps which have been very slow in a row, and I really don't know what's happened there.
He has some serious damage to his car because he is off pace coming out of turn 11 right there.
He's very slow, and that means put down Daniel Lee right behind him. And we have to figure out what happened to Esteban Balao. Has he not got enough fuel? Is he trying to save a little bit of fuel here? Daniel Lee's last lap, 1:37.3. Esteban Balao's a 1:39.1. Daniel Lee is right there with them as they come down into turn number 2.
Esteban Balao had an off track on lap 53. That's the last mark I have on him, so I'm not sure if that's the case.
But then still, he did a 1 minute I'll have a look back at that, but I'm not quite sure. But Ismael Balal has lost himself a ton of time here late on in the race, and this is not what he's going to be wanting. As we can't see any damage to his race car. He has, however, got Daniel Lee right there with him. Is Balal just deciding that he wants to play some games and race someone? Has he not got enough fuel? Is he going to be close at the end? This is one of those things that even though it's a lapped race, you've got to make sure you get enough fuel into these race cars. And Balal looks as though he's having to save a little bit late on in this race. Daniel Lee is less than a second behind him now as they come down in to turn number 10.
That's actually a weird thing because all of the top 4 runners have done 2 pit stops, so miscalculating 2 pit stops that much is that's a driver error right there. There's no excuses for that one.
So coming down now into turn number 11, this is where we'll really be able to see whether or not Balal has lost some time, or got some damage to his car, because this couple of corners will highlight any handling problems. But he is good enough through here. Daniel Lee is right behind him. We have got ourselves pretty much 5.5 laps to go in this race. A slow car coming out of pit lane. That, I believe, is down the end on the inside of turn number 1. Be careful, guys. You come down this back straightaway. Tell you what this does. This puts Daniel Lee trying to make a move. And Daniel Lee, he was close enough to go down the inside. Is he going to try and do so? Not quite close enough there. But as you see there, Balal goes wide. This is going to give Daniel Lee opportunity to cut underneath there. Daniel Lee moves himself up in to the second position with 5 laps left to go here at Motegi, and Balal is now going to have to find a way back around.
Yeah, my guess is that if he did not take any damage or his car is otherwise fixed, if he had to save fuel and just had to block Daniel for the last 5 laps, my guess is that he's not going to have anything to offer for Daniel in the last 5 laps. That's basically if it's a fuel. In case of fuel, that's pretty much done for Balal right there. He's trying.
He is trying. He got himself squarely there out of turn number 9. Coming up towards turn 10, you've got yourself lap traffic once again. This is John Ailes. Could Balal try and repay the favour as they come down this back straightaway? And it looks as though John Ailes is going to get cleanly out of the way. Thank God they caught him here rather than a couple of corners later. But Balal looking down now as they come into 11. These drivers, this is going to be great for the end of this race. In the battle for the second position, out front, Nico Brandt is over a minute ahead of these guys.
Yeah, what on earth happened to Esteban Balal? Because last time around was 137.8. Not the kind of pace that you expect a guy who's saving fuel.
Yeah, we will try our best to find out what happens to that before this race is completed. However, Daniel Lee and Ismael Balal, this is going to be a great charge to the end. To run through your top 5. Nico Brandt, your race leader. Daniel Lee in second. Ismael Balal in third. GC Nidderman in fourth. Dave Jinks running out your top 5. Brazilian Fan in sixth. John Ailes in seventh. Danny Ent in eighth. Brad Sanford in ninth. Steve Clays, Joe Branch, and Mauricio Meliz is out of the race.
I have to talk about Dave Jinks for a second. He's been he's been out of the picture for almost the entire race. But like you said, actually, solid top 5 finishes is what you really go for. And Dave Jinks is currently in the 5th spot, even though he's been totally off the cameras. He's gonna get his 3rd top 5 finish. And what a surprise! Will's ISP internet provider just gave up for a second, but he's back in the booth right now.
And it was just actually having a chat to Daniel Lee. And as you see, Balal getting very close there out of turn number 10, coming down the back straightaway. And Daniel Lee doesn't have any idea what happened as well, but he'll be happy with the 2nd position. And this is going to be a great finish to the race. And Balal now is going to have to try and make a really opportune move, because we've seen how good Daniel Lee is getting on to the power. Balal sliding there through turn number 13, but getting a good drive off 14, coming down the front straightaway. We have got ourselves pretty much 4 laps to go here at Motegi.
Looking for it!
Goes down to the inside and he's broken himself there. Not what he wanted to do. Daniel Lee's going to get back ahead, and Balal now is going to have to charge. He's going to try and get himself back up there. As I said, Balal has to try something opportune, and he had the chance. Got very close to Daniel Lee coming down the front straightaway, and in fact you could see Daniel Lee moving down to the centre of the racetrack. He knew that he was going to have a chance to go down the inside, but Balal just outbroke himself and that is not what you want to do with 3 laps left to go in the race.
Yeah, that was a bad move by Ballard. I mean, even though he got the line on the inside, he had to recognize that he was so far on the inside of the corner. There's no way to turn the car in that pace. Well, what do you have to make it that steep turn? If he had to take an outside line, he would have had the angle to turn the car, but no way that deep into the corner. He should have just braked way earlier than that. But we'll be interested to see if he's able to catch Daniel.
You say that, he's already caught Daniel. Somehow, it looks as though Ballard's put on his hard charging hat once again, and he's back down to within a second of Daniel Lee. And just give you an update on Nico Brown. He is currently working lap number 60, so he's got himself 2.5 laps left to go here in the Indy Grand Prix of Motegi. We always talk about how these road races get exciting towards the end. We have got ourselves a great battle for second position. Istvan Ballard driving the heart out of his car. Daniel Lee ahead of him. And I tell you what, guys, Ballard is going to come across the start-finish line. This is going to be a slower lap, but if you look at it, he only did a 1 minute 39.4 after going off the track in turn 1 and losing a ton of time. Daniel Lee, very slow in turn number 1 there, and Ballard having to get off the throttle, but he could have made the move into turn number 2 there, just as a little bit too far on the outside. You see, ducking down, trying to distract Lee. These 2 drivers starting to play some serious mind games with each other, and we just need to hope that these guys decide
Lee
to
is having very much problems with his tires.
And Ballard's gone back past. He's going to have the outside line, however, into the next corner. Will be able to clear him. He's going to have to take the long way round, but gets the job done. And Daniel Lee's lost that second position. So these 2 guys really going at it at the end of this race. Daniel Lee's last lap time was only a 1 minute 39.1, and these 2 drivers putting on a great show for the end of this race. And you see now Ballard
going to have a dive in at turn 9.
No. And they've got slow traffic ahead of them. So this could be key yet again. That is Julian Pham, who they are going to hopefully just about catch on the back straightaway. So Daniel Lee could have a bit of a draft if he needs one.
In the middle of the corner, actually.
Oh, this is going to be difficult for... Look at this. Daniel Lee's going to try the outside line. But... you know, you should have defended the middle of the racetrack, because now Daniel Lee can pull down to the inside, coming into 11, side by side as they come down, and their barrel should have Daniel Lee spins it. Oh no! And after getting a position, Daniel Lee there just lost it a little bit, and these 2 drivers are not giving an inch on the racetrack. Great racing between them. Ballard goes wide in the final corner. It looks like both their tyres are falling off the cliff, but Daniel Lee is the man. Ballard, who is going to be the one to make the mistake next on the racetrack. And I tell you what, I'm sure these guys are just loving the driving they're having, because it almost looks like they're ironically making mistakes to let the other one catch back up.
Yeah, meanwhile, Nico Brandt is just about to start his last lap of the race, but not sure which one to follow. The leader of this one.
So Nico Brandt, he starts his last lap of the race. We'll keep half an eye on that while having a look at that battle for the second position.
Yeah, these guys are going to have 1.5 laps still left to go, and Nico Brandt is giving everything he's got right now.
And Daniel Lee, he got a very good run there off turn number 7. Having a look now down into 8.
Jesus Christ!
Side by side once again.
What a move!
Oh my God! That is a move for the ages.
Who on earth would go for an overtaking move on a second to last lap into turn 7?
That is the craziest, most daring move of the race, and then some. Ballard, he saw him coming, had to go round the outside there. Daniel Lee cannot believe what he just did, and that is one of the bravest moves I have seen in the IndyCar in a very long time. Keeping an eye on Nico Brandt, he has got himself half a lap left to go here at Twin Ring Motegi. Got himself a couple of guys ahead of him, Brandon Sanford and Danley Ench. So he's got half a lap left to go. Meanwhile, these 2 drivers, this one Ballard and Daniel Lee, they are coming down towards the white flag now. They have got 1 more lap to decide who's going to get second position here in the Indy Grand Prix of Motegi. Daniel Lee has got himself about 4 car lengths lead, but slowing a little bit in turn number 1. Nico Brandt, meanwhile, coming down into turn number 11. Just a couple of more corners left to go for him. Making that flick once again to the left. Breaking down hard. Now he can coast it home for here. And after having so much bad luck this season, Nico Brandt is going to come home to win round 15 of the Ultimate IndyCar Series in great fashion. Welcome back to Victory Lane and Mr. Nico Brandt. Meanwhile, Daniel Lee, Esteban Barral, this one is far from over. Is Barral going to try and repay the favour in turn number 7? You look at Daniel Lee, he's covering the line there. Barral, in fact, trying to look to the outside line. Not in a place to try and make it happen as they come through turn number 8. He's only got himself, perhaps, I would say 2 more passing opportunities. But the way these drivers are going, they can pretty much pass anywhere. Barral getting oh so close to the rear. Daniel Lee coming down into turn number 10 now.
This is going to be insane braking into turn 11, tell you that.
I tell you what, yeah, that is going to be the key.
He's going to have a run.
Barral, Lee, he's going to have a run. If he can tuck in, get that draft, he could make the move.
He does have a run.
11. And you see
Daniel Lee
immediately all the way down to the inside line. Barrow's going to try the outside line. This is going to be crazy. Who's going to get the line?
Outside!
Barrow on the outside! Cannot believe that! Oh my God, these two drivers. Oh, look at Daniel Lee once again!
Oh no!
They finally touch on the final corner. Barrow is going to have to settle for third. Daniel Lee gets second position there. But that was some great racing up until the final corner. And it's a shame it had to end that way. Daniel Lee comes home second. Esteban Barral comes home in third. But I tell you what, even though Barral got knocked off a bit at the end, he's going to be happy with that racing. We need to have a look back at that replay. But it just looked as though Lee just turned in a little bit too early and didn't expect Barral to try and put one down the inside coming into turn 13.
Yeah, I had to say that even though Barral was the one that got clipped, that was pretty much he would have had to make an insane crossover out of that corner in order to complete the pass. I'm not sure if that's the blame for anyone. That was basically like a semi-desperate move for Esteban Barral there, right there. But yeah, excellent fight for those guys. And I even though they had the touch in the last corner, I wouldn't call that like a bad finish for that fight. That was insane.
So it's not at that point where we had to take ourselves a deep breath there. The drivers are still coming, flooding past the start-finish line. And Nico Brandt, he is your race winner with a time of 1 hour, 41 minutes, 18 seconds, .908. Daniel Lee comes home second, 1 minute and 11 seconds behind. Absolute dominance there by Nico Brandt. Esteban Barral comes home in the third position. Just having a look, see if everyone's passed, but yes they are. Jussi Nimmermann, he comes home in the 4th spot. Dave Jinks in 5th. Julian Pham comes home in the 6th position. Danny Yench in 7th. John Ailes in 8th. Brad Sanford in 9th. Your retirees, Steve Clay, Joey Branch, and Marito Melias. And only after what had been a pretty much lackluster first part of the race, they made up for it in those last 10 laps.
Yeah, definitely. I was just about to, after the race, without those last 15 laps, I would have said to you, this is one of the most boring races I've had to broadcast. But in all fairness, yeah, Barral and Lee just took it to the line, and actually saved the 2 sections of the race. First of all, with the Daniel Lee takes the lead into turn 7. Actually, we could have a look at the replay right here and now before we have any interviews. So this is going to be the case where the Daniel Lee just dives to the inside. That's the last place on the track where I expect somebody to go for an overtaking maneuver. That's just a freakish maneuver.
Yeah, crazy those last couple of laps. I do have to apologise to any dogs, cats, or any other inanimate animals whose ears must have been burnt after that piece of commentary, but wow.
And after that, we have the last lap incident where these two come into the last back straightaway. The last time, here we go. Barral has a run on him, and Daniel covers the inside like he should, and actually brakes early enough for Barral to dive on the outside into turn 11. Now he's on the inside into turn 12, but Daniel Lee just makes an insane diver towards the outside and covers up the inside into the last corner. And well, looking at from that point of view, I don't know if Esteban Barral would have been able to beat Daniel into the line if he had enough space to travel too wide through there, but that was a good finish.
Even though Barral would have had the inside line into 13, he would have had the outside line into 14, and 14 is where you need to get the drive. It would have been very close between them, but that was last lap drama there. Both those drivers get home okay though, but that is some crazy stuff. Perhaps we should say hello to second place finisher, because I know Nico Brandt's gone off to watch some Germans play football. Daniel Lee came home second. Those last 10 laps, that was just crazy.
Yeah. Well, I will say that me and Istvan, we did sort of enter a gentleman's pact, whereby with about 10 laps to go, I thought, for Christ's sake, we can make a show of this, because we were lapping pretty much identically. I couldn't gain any ground, so we're lapping the same. I just thought, why not make a go of it and have a proper battle that we would have had I qualified. So, you know, I didn't want to be cheated of that, and it's been agreed, so we had a decent battle for the last 10 laps.
And then you punt. No, you didn't punt him off. That's unfair. First of all, I want to take you back to turn 7. Where the hell did he decide that you could overtake someone into turn 7? That's in none of the rule books and none of the how to overtake it Motegi codes.
Whereabouts is turn 7 again?
That's that fast left-hander where you overtook Istvan.
Ah, right. Yeah. God knows. All these corners, they're all sort of like flat. But you never get your bearings around here, but it's blooming flat, and if you get your entry right, you can just sort of, I don't know, it's not nearly a power slide, but on most of these corners you need to be balancing it on the exit, and I don't know, I seem to get a good exit from these corners, but the braking is always my weakness. Just seems to brake too early, too softly.
In fact, we did talk about that a couple of times for the broadcast, and we were one of the drivers who could exit corners better than pretty much anyone. And then coming down into the final lap, where on the back straightaway, you saw Balal coming, he moved down to the right-hand side of the racetrack, and then he decided that he wanted to go round on the outside. And then after that, through turns 12, 13, you just dove around the outside of him out of 12. Again, that's not a place where you're allowed to overtake. And then coming into 13, just looked as though the luck finally ran out for both of you.
Yeah, I had him in the corner of my eye during those two corners, and he just disappeared in that last split second, and that's when he hit me. So, yeah, if they're further away from you, you can see them easily, but when they're in your blind spot, you can't, and that's when we came together, and, you know, Istvan was the guy who got the worst half of it.
But had you two have not have touched, the question has remained, would you have been able to just get that drive coming to the line, or do you think he would have had you?
I would have hoped so, but I think that had we not touched, it would have been a simple drag race up to the start. Simple as that. We'll never know.
We will never know. And next week we are going to Richmond. We've not really seen them in the ovals yet. Are you going to make a trip to the short oval under the lights?
It might be enough to pull me in. I might just gravitate to that. I'm not too sure. Oval, I'm a completely different guy on oval. I'm way down the field. Just don't get it. So if I do take the plunge, I wouldn't expect anything like what I am on the road. That sounds really egotistic, but
we'll let you off it. Another great drive, and we have to say you've had some very good finishes on the small number of races you have done. But where does this one rank compared to Alton Park and Brands Hatch?
Well, this one was a bit of a loaded race. I missed qualifying, but that comes with a positive edge as well, because when you have a few cars to overtake, it always electrifies you for the rest of the race. So this was a really fun race. It went really quick as well. I've got to tell you, each of those pit stops seemed about 10 minutes apart. So Brands Hatch was thrilling, and Motegi here was fun. I'd rank them two on the equal sides. Obviously, Alton was a disaster, but yeah, Alton and Motegi and Brands pretty good in each other's ways.
Well done, and that was a very good finish for you in second position in that number 64 Mencap machine. Brad Samford, you had an interesting day today as well. Seeing as you're about, I will talk to you. You had a good job in that number 09 car. We know you struggled on the road course here today, but you managed to bring it home 9th, so well done.
Thanks a lot, man. I started really getting a handle for the track about 40 laps in.
And was it just a lack of practice you've been able to do at this track? I mean, obviously, I know that yourself and Team Slowpoke Racing have been concentrating pretty heavily on what is one of the most demanding parts of the IndyCar official season. Is it just been the fact you've not been able to balance your time to do all of the above?
Yeah, pretty much. I have a good understanding of a lot of the road course tracks, but I haven't spent any time with Motegi Road. Maybe 30 minutes I was able to get in this week, and then 30 minutes prior to the start of the race today.
And first of all, going next week on to the lights of Richmond, you guys have been absolutely staggering there this week. Are we expecting to see a slowpoke domination?
Hopefully. I want to see how many of the guys will be there. I'll be there for sure. I'm probably going to start running this series every Sunday morning. I really enjoy the group of guys it's with. And while I'm at it, I do need to say thank you to Dennis Garazi. We don't have any Englishmen at Slowpoke, but we have a Frenchman. And he's really, really good with the road courses, and he was able to provide me with a pretty stable setup to get the race going.
And you can buy him a beer, because you did win the Motegi Challenge. Just on the result, you managed to beat Dave Jinks by 16 points. I'm guessing largely in part to your dominance at Motegi last week, so congratulations and well done.
Hey, thanks. That's awesome. I appreciate it, and thanks to Afterburn for putting this series on.
And Mr. Dave Jinks, you had a good race once again. We talk about consistency. Consistency always seems to be key for you, and you once again come home with a top 5.
Yeah, thank you, Will. I did spend a bit of practice this week because I know my weakness is on road courses, and congrats to the twin Motegi race combined winner.
And, I mean, take us through your race, because it looked as though it was pretty, I wouldn't say lackluster, but you just racing by yourself for the most part. How difficult was it to keep that momentum going when you didn't seem to have many cars around you?
Yeah, it was a little bit boring. I did, went off a few times. I didn't spin or hit anything. I tried to stay out of the fast guy's way. I thought I'd have a little more challenge from Julian Pham than he was able to mount there.
And next week we'll go back from a road course to an oval to Richmond International Raceway. Now, Richmond is a track that you've had plenty of practice on before. What's the likelihood of seeing for you getting yourself another good finish there next week?
Well, I think one of the keys to Richmond is finishing at all. I don't have one of the fastest cars. I do need to work some more on the setup. But I finished top 5 both races I was in this week, so I feel good about it.
And meanwhile, when we talk about consistency, you do increase your lead in the combined championship standings to 17 points. So well done on that. And we will see you, hopefully, next week at Richmond.
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for hosting the series.
Not to worry, and thank you for participating. In fact, thank you to everyone who's participated and watched or done anything with the Afterburn IndyCar series so far this year as we approach the summer of racing. You any closing thoughts?
Hell of a 10 laps.
The final 10 laps. You could have just started the race there, couldn't you?
Yeah.
I tell you what, it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if Daniel Lee had started further up the field, but for all of you people who are wondering why he didn't qualify, he was too busy eating muffins. So he can blame himself and no one else for that. Next week, we will be going under the lights to Richmond, back on the ovals for yet another week here in the Afterburn IndyCar Series. Round 16 will be held at Richmond International Raceway, one of the most difficult tracks in the Afterburn IndyCar Series. This short bull ring of an oval, 0.75 miles long, is one of the most demanding in the world. And Under the Lights as well has an entirely different level to it because the grip levels really do vary over the course of a run. That will be coming up next Sunday here on Glacier TV. Meanwhile, we will be back throughout this week. We have got ourselves Grand Am Premier Series racing. We have ourselves the Torque Racing Touring Car Championship, the Torque Freak Racing Summer Super Cup, and we've got ourselves a new league, the Big Dog Racing Series as well. So to everyone here at Glacier TV, myself, Ian Backman, and everyone else, it's time to say goodbye. So, goodbye.
See ya.
Goodbye.